When Rangers lifted the Scottish Premiership title in 2021, Steven Gerrard was hailed a hero. But central to the success were his coaching team, led by Gary McAllister and Michael Beale. Now moving into management himself, Beale is today's guest on Currie Club, the Scottish Football Sessions. Kenny, Michael, really good to see you. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast to talk about a pretty incredible time in Rangers history, such an important time for the club as well. The Steven Gerrard years, if you like, and all of the coaching staff who were with him. You played such a big role, Michael, and Gary McAllister and many others as well. So it'll be interesting to hear from you, your side of it, through your eyes, if you like, the success story in the end in prizing the league title back from Celtic. Let me just go back to the beginning, though. But when the call comes and you hear that Steven Gerrard is going to take the job at Rangers and he wants you to come with him, did you jump at that opportunity? Were you delighted? Did you know what was coming?
When the phone call came, I didn't even know his number, to be honest. Even though we both worked at Liverpool together, we wasn't close. I'd been away, and in the interim of me going away, he'd come back as a coach. I think Liverpool's plan was that Steven was going to move, and I was going to then move back into one of the senior coaching positions. So it was lovely to be asked. Obviously, I knew the size of the club. I knew the challenge because I'd obviously watched Brendan from afar at Celtic and thought, OK, this is going to make me want to get out of bed every day for a few years. And I was excited for Steven at the start of his journey as well. Obviously knew the other people going in, and when he mentioned Gary Mack, I just thought the whole thing sounded like an unbelievable opportunity for myself.
Kenny, you were there before the new management team took over. Just in your words, how important a moment was this in the history of the football club that somebody could come in and turn things around?
It was massive because it was needed. We weren't in a great place for the couple of years since getting promoted. There was so much kind of furore surrounding getting back, and 55's coming, and it was Baldwin. You've lived it now, you've been through it. It was this obsession that it needed stability. You know, it needed someone to come in and get a hold of it, have a focus, and firstly be really, really good at what they do. Yeah. And turn the fortunes around and get a group of players that were going to be capable to have a sustained challenge over the course of a season, not just games here or game there, because we could compete in game here, but see, over the course of a season, we just weren't built for it. We never had the mentality for it. That was the intriguing part for me, watching guys coming up from down south, but huge names and top coaches. It was how they're going to adapt.
Scott Arfield first in the door, Alan McGregor returning to the club, Connor Goldson, many more, Ryan Kent on loan.
Yeah, and I remember like you're putting that back four together, you know, John Flanagan, Goldson, Katic, straight away, that's your back four that you're going in. Obviously, Tav, Alan McGregor coming back. So I remember going away on our first pre-season and just doing practice after practice of our shape. And we were trying to be very hard to beat in maybe a 4-1, 4-1 and pressing in straight lines. And to be fair, they took everything on. We changed a lot quite quickly in terms of standards. That's the biggest thing I can say about Steven and then Gary, that in terms of like their general standards a lot higher than other people's higher standards. And so they brought that into the club. They brought an energy and a direction. And then the rest of us, the staff, fed off it. That's when it started. And, you know, he said in the first interview, didn't they, there'd be bumps on the road. And there was plenty. But looking back now, I'm hugely proud of where the club is today.
I was going to talk to you about the Portland because I remember you were on the pro license, again, just sharing what one of the things that you said. You talked about that game when you gave your presentation, and it was you made a decision that night that we're going to go and we're going to try and outplay them. We're going to try and play the way that we played domestically and not just sit back and accept 30-35% of the ball. We're going to try and play the way that Rangers want to play.
What you're hoping is they come down 15% thinking, oh, you know, it's a Scottish team, it's Rangers, and you jump up 15% and be the best version of yourself. It was just in the day before, we were just about to do the walkthrough with the players, and I just had that little devil in me that thought, let's just cut the cord here, and let's not talk to our players about being closed. OK, defensively we'll be closed, but when we play, we want Barisic and Tavernier to get on the last line, like they do domestically, and let's see what happens. And from the game, we could have got real harsh feedback, but we didn't. We rolled the dice, and the manager went with it, and I thought his team talk before that game was outstanding, and the players went. And you can feel sometimes when a group's with you, and I always felt that with that group of players. Maybe it was because we recruited them, the majority, that they came to play for the manager and to play for the staff and play for the club. And certainly in the year that we won it, I felt the changing room managed themselves.
We've said this down the years, the hardest games, or maybe the most important, I should say, come for Rangers, Celtic and other teams in Scotland right at the beginning of the campaign, sometimes before a ball's been kicked in the league. Like that was incredible, getting into the Europa League. It was immediate progress, maybe restoring quite a bit of pride in the football club as well, given what had happened before. Morelos being sent off, and you then mentioned him scoring the winner the following season, Legia Warsaw, again to get back in the group stages. But what was he like to manage?
The boy that you see behind the scenes wasn't the one that the media were portraying. Kenny played with him, he's a laugher and joker, and he trains every day when other players wouldn't. And his temperament around the place and his training in the time that we were there was very, very good. There was some other things around it, but he was a young boy, and when you realise where he's come from on the journey to get to Scotland and the way the media was with him in their first period, I thought a lot of it was to protect himself. And I think he's matured a lot, and he matured a lot as a football player. And there was a lot of people around Europe that were constantly asking us about him. So he was a player that intrigued people, but I enjoyed working with him. He's a lovable rogue, if you like. His teammates love him, and the next day they don't, and he's that. But in terms of like when we were there, in terms of his training and his performance, he scored a number of goals for us that were invaluable, and I'll always be grateful for that time we had working together, because he challenged me, but in a good way. He rewarded us as well.
His performances, again, particularly in Europe, they were sensational. And I remember his work ethic's actually really, really good. He could work a back line on his own. And that's something I don't think there's many at the club over the last few years have been able to do. But his goal threat and his goal return has been sensational.
I thought Steven managed him really well in the time that we were there. Like, he always looked at the bigger picture. He was very honest with him behind the scenes, as all the staff were, but he managed him really well. And we saw, if you look at the background where he went before he came to Scotland, he came at a young age, and he's a father now, and he's married, and you're hoping he's maturing, and everything there was to get out of that boy, I think we got it out of him in the time we was working with him.
Yeah, definitely. Right, going back to the first season then, because some big moments, you don't win the league. And you know that Steven's been brought to the football club to try and prize the league back. It was a building process. But in that first season, you get the better of Celtic for the first time in a long time. Brendan Rodgers then leaves Celtic. Just talk through those little moments, how important it was to take 3 points against them. And then how you felt when you heard that Brendan Rodgers was moving on as well. Firstly,
Brendan had done a great job, and when you're going in from the outside, we saw all the media, 100 million was it quoted that it was going to take to... We didn't spend that in the time we was there. We generated quite a bit in Europe, so we knew that the challenge was big, and in the first season, trying to juggle, really. We had to do well in Europe to finance it. And we fell short, really, mentally and physically. And maybe the way that we set the team up the first year, because we pressed like crazy the first season. I remember the first Old Firm we won, which was a big moment for the club, because it had taken a few heavy defeats, it's fair to say.
4-0 and 5-0 the season prior, just before you came in.
And so there was a nervousness around the fans. We won it playing a certain way, and I'm not sure that was sustainable over the amount of games, over a 60-game season with our squad. I thought Brendan moved on at a good time for Brendan, because we were certainly growing, and it's whether he felt his group had enough to hold us off or to go again.
Prior to Steven coming in, that it was going to be a long, long way back. You know, it was a long, long way back, and I think when you've got a manager the quality that he is, and it's not just about having the best players and having the most money, he was making these players a lot better. Like, you've seen massive improvement in some really, really good players, and immediately, the minute he came in the door, he's done a brilliant job. But I think the timing for everybody just fit, apart from the Celtic fans at the time, obviously.
Exactly. Psychologically, it was quite a big thing. But look, we've mentioned that first season, the disappointment of obviously not winning the league then, but you know you're sort of building into that second season.
There was a period in that second season where everything was coming together, and I still think we tried to chase 4 trophies with a squad that was just a little bit short in terms of enough variety, and maybe if Alfredo wasn't available, it had a huge impact on the team. And we never had that issue the year later. We recruited really well, and we was aggressive in terms of our approach towards recruitment, and we got the support from the board, but we really pushed the ball to help us with that as well.
I think Joe Aribo had come in at the start of that season as well, the second year, but again, a player you were obviously trying to develop. Why do you think it fell apart a little bit after that trip to Dubai, second half of the season? Because it felt like, again, you won the Old Firm, didn't you, just going into the New Year period? It felt like there was the chance, more than a chance, that you'd go on and win the league that year.
I've heard a lot spoken about it. The training camp was very, very positive. The players were extremely positive. We came back, and for whatever reason, we didn't get the results. And it's really disappointing. It was nothing to do with the training camp. The training camp was really successful. That was a really disappointing the second year, because I felt the first year we could have gone closer. The second year I thought we should have won it, and we didn't. Fair play to them, because their run after the New Year period, as much as our run is spoken about, I don't think their run's spoken about enough. They went an incredible
They did.
run.
Hardly dropped a point.
Yeah, and so if they would have dropped a couple, it would have been closer. And then, but look, the season ended the way it ended, and obviously during that period, you're more concerned at that moment about your players' welfare. You've got some players living in Glasgow in apartments on their own. You've got players flying home. No one knows in the pandemic when we're coming back. The period we had off, we used it very wisely as a staff. And we came back in a fantastic place without even really seeing each other.
Yeah.
We also recruited Roof and Itten, and when you look over that season, I think Roof was the top goal scorer in the league, Morelos second, and I think Itten and Jermaine both got 7 or 9 goals each. So that number 9 shirt scored a lot of goals. We had a different way of playing in that third season, and no one's really picked up on it. We didn't play what we'd played the previous years, and I think that was the big key to us, obviously, having the season we had. And it's probably still not sunk in, because I'm still disappointed we didn't win more, that we went a whole season unbeaten. I remember walking around the day we won it, angry. Like, I think back to it and think, just have a beer, Mick, and enjoy it, do you know what I mean? But at the time, I was angry we hadn't won more. 56 games, to lose 3 and to lose 2 in open play out of 56 for Rangers, including how many European games, and to come up with 1 trophy was difficult to take. Every window and break that we had in the last 6 or 8 months, people came for different members of staff. And so it was at that stage. And I suppose, do you think you could take it forward? I definitely think we'd have won the league.
What a season Tavernier had. They both had a great season, but the numbers of Tavernier that year in particular, and he got Player of the Year in the end.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous for a right back, isn't it?
He was the one that the staff were probably the most harsh on in the time that we were there, because we felt he was capable of so much more. The boy that we arrived, we felt he was the only player at the time that we arrived that would have got into Celtic's team. He was maybe in a comfort zone, and he is where he's gone to now. I texted him last season after we left in the European run and said, you're playing the best football I've seen you play, and I'm proud of you, because he grew so much into the role as captain, but also into the role of being a top player. But we always turn up in Europe, and this is a right back scoring goals like a centre forward. And I think then, and then Joe came into his body. We saw it more again after we left last year, but Joe came into himself. And
he had nights, didn't he, like Braga? Big moments for him.
And Yanis Hadji did things, and Arfield had a real purple patch at the start of the season. Like, his energy and enthusiasm as a man is so infectious. And the growth in Ryan Jack, we moved his position a bit, but the trust he adds with us to work, and Glenn Kamara. There's so many of them. Connor Goldson, Leon Balogun.
You've not even mentioned Calvin Bassey yet, who obviously you probably didn't see the best of, but you were working to try and get the best out of him.
Well, I remember we played a B-team game at Ibrox. We were very clever. We handpicked who we played so we could look at certain players in teams. And Calvin just had this infectious, and he had this natural enthusiasm to run. And he came in, and we thought, right, we've got 2 outstanding fullbacks behind the 2 senior ones. If they train with them every day and chase them down, in the back of our mind, we thought we could always go to a back 3 at times. But when we came back for pre-season the last year, he came back in a fantastic... He'd grown up. It's amazing. You have a player in May, and they go away on a 2-month holiday. It always happens with young players, and they come back, and it's like they've grown physically and in confidence. And I think the first year for him at Rangers was a big year. There was a little bit around the COVID, so to be sold for the amount he has, and Joe Aribo. So the recruitment was strong all the way through. Yeah. Fair play to Mark Allen, and then to obviously Ross Wilson and all of the recruitment staff around it, with Andy Scolding. But obviously the eye that we had as well, the type of player that we wanted. Glenn Kamara coming from Dundee.
50 grand.
Not playing. Yeah, that was... I think it was slightly less actually.
Was it?
The song's actually great, isn't it?
So better.
Yeah. So there was loads.
It had to be done from the fans' point of view.
I've got to say we were brutal to each other, not the players. We was always super honest, but really positive with the players. But you see, inside the room as a staff, brutal to each other. Like the work ethic and how honest we were with each other. There was some times, like you say, after 2 seasons, like I was extremely honest. There was times where Steven was brilliant with us as a staff and removed a lot of clouds. Like, he took the pressure for all of us. Don't think anyone else could have done what Steven done. You don't realise how far behind you are until you're in. And then, you know, there was no pot of gold. Because even I looked at it and thought, wow, I thought there'd have been more guarantees in terms of finances. That's what I'm thinking.
I think a lot of people assumed when he took the job there had to be guarantees for finance.
And not really towards the club, because the club did everything they could all the time. That's the one thing I would say. The board were pure and they were huge support to us in all the aspects we changed behind the scenes. But I was a little bit surprised that Steven took such a big gamble when we, you know, because I was thinking there'll be more money. And then when there wasn't, I was thinking, OK, this is going to be tough. But he took that on, and Gary took it on more than me. I was able to stay fresh. We were able to go and work with the players. Gary took it on as a Rangers fan, as a proud Scotsman. He took it on, and Steven took the whole thing on. One thing I would say is behind the scenes to each other, we were brutal to each other in terms of the work ethic and in terms of what we demanded from each other.
You knew it was that day against St Mirren.
I was going to say, like,
the fans turned up outside the gate.
We've all seen the videos. He's arriving at Ibrox, and the fans, and they weren't allowed in the stadium, but there's 50,000 outside the stadium, you know, like, and the smoke and just everything. It gets goosebumps now thinking about it. You know, it was incredible. It must be memories that I'll live forever for.
Sliding around the dressing room.
I'm glad my one didn't get shot.
I was going to say, who put that out, by the way?
I remember Big Gav, the security guard, got thrown. Jimmy got thrown. Everybody got thrown. The young girl in the canteen got thrown. Like Kenny said, we look outside around Europe and the world and we go, look at that atmosphere and look at that. I don't think you need to look much further than Glasgow. And in all fairness, it's both sides of the city as well. I think they're two wonderful clubs. I remember, it was the next day actually, I remember driving home and getting a bit emotional. And I got home and I took a load of stuff for the children with 55 all over it, the big crest and that. And the 2 boys were playing PlayStation. I was like, all right, Dad, I bought you all this stuff, but that's kids. Then they bring you right back down to earth, don't they? Because driving home, I was a mess. But I know everybody else was. I saw what that took out of Steven emotionally and Gary. I thought they wore it more. You see what it meant to everyone, you know, Jimmy Bell and the backroom staff, you know, Davey the masseur and people like that.
That last season, by the way, that final full season, you had some of the European games as well on that road. Benfica matches.
Those were the kind of level of opposition I felt in the 2 years. It was the Porto game, the Benfica game, that these teams are Champions League teams.
I'm still not sure how you didn't beat Benfica that night. You were 3-1 up, by the way. But
like, we should have beat Benfica 5-1.
I know.
What was wrong with just beating Benfica 3-1?
I know.
That's what I said to the players afterwards.
There was a chance
where have
the game
we come
there?
to where we're not happy beating Benfica 3-1 and we've got both fullbacks on the last line in like last 10 minutes. Both games, we were 2 goals up in both games with 10 or 12 minutes to go. When you look at where the Rangers players had come from in their careers prior to and how they got to there, I think what you're seeing is vision from the coaching management staff, certainly. Players who really believe in it, and then players that have grown together, that are enjoying playing together and enjoying working together. It's the only way, and we didn't get there the old-fashioned way, if you like. We didn't get there staying closed and fighting and making big tackles. We actually got there playing some fantastic football. That's a proud moment, because then you're seeing the culmination of your work.
We need to talk about the final few months then, because after the highs, some of the European games we've just mentioned there, the progress that you were making, to then miss out in the Champions League against Malmo is an enormous blow to you guys personally, I'm sure, to the football club as well. And then the next few months, clearly it unravelled, and then the opportunity comes for Steven Gerrard to move on. Were you surprised how it went, that final few months for you, and you surprised how quickly it kind of ended, how abrupt it was?
We've always had maximum support from the board. I always thought they wanted to deliver more than what they probably could. After we obviously had won 55, the next thing is, right, let's kick on. Can we go and recruit again? We knew that maybe that was what some 1 or 2 players had come to achieve. So therefore, did they have the hunger to go again? That was what they'd come to do for 3 or 4 years. So it was fair to say we'd like to have maybe recruited 1 or 2 more. The finances ultimately weren't there. And then I think we started the season and people were looking to pick holes because we were so perfect the year before. We still, at the moment of leaving, I think we were 4 points in front. Yeah. And there is no way that they would have come past us.
You think you stay on, you win the league?
No, because
obviously it was a different season.
We hadn't lost in 8 or 9 Old Firms, which means the next one's in the post. In all fairness, in a 2-alls like in a 2-alls competition, you know, anyone can win in any derby. You know, especially a derby that close. But the games weren't particularly close. They might have been in scoreline, but when you was in the stadium, we were very much in control of every game.
The roles had reversed. There was a psychology to it as well now that winning that many games and going unbeaten in an Old Firm for that, it does build the pressure on the other team, and it did feel like that Rangers had Celtic's number at that moment.
What I would say is the manager that went in is a very, very good manager. He's a very good coach. Yeah. So they were going to improve, but so was we. We weren't planning on standing still. We'd evolved subtly over time, and obviously we went into the next international window and the next one again, top of the league in a strong place, and the mentality at the time was no one's stopping us. And things happened so quickly in this game.
Did it surprise you how quickly it ended? And did you sort of have a feeling as well you didn't really get a chance to say goodbye?
No, we never got a chance to say goodbye, and that was horrible. So I remember having to send a message via TAV to the players group, and because what players do you call out of 30? Do you make 30 phone calls? The manager has to do it, Gary, and mindful that we have to be respectful of everybody else's feelings at the time. It did come very quickly.
Were you aware how much it was going to hurt some of the fans?
It's fair to say that in the time, I can only talk about my own personal situation. I had a number of offers in the time I was at Rangers to be a manager myself, and it was a dream or an aim. And I know that the manager had resisted a number of really, really good opportunities. It's not my place to say the clubs and the names, but Steven was very loyal to Rangers, and it just at that moment, he had to weigh everything up on a personal level. He shared with us his decision, and then the people chose. Even in that moment, I had a situation and stuff going on, and I think every window and break that we had in the last 6 or 8 months, people came for different members of staff. And so it was at that stage, and I suppose, do you think you could take it forward? I definitely think we'd have won the league.
I can tell there's a tinge of sadness about the way it ended and not getting to say goodbye. But regardless of everything else, what a journey! What a 3 and a bit years you had there.
Well, firstly, what a football club and what a group of people that are around it and support it. It's an institution. It's a privilege for anyone that works there. Kenny played there twice, so he did go back there. You know, I think anyone that was part of our staff had the opportunity, they would in the future, because it had a massive hold on us. The memories will last forever.
You touched on it perfectly. It does, it leaves a mark, and it's not just on, it's players, it's staff, the lads that I played with when I first went back in 2000, your Albertses, your Moles, your Newmans, Giovanni. You know, like these guys, when they come back, they're still absolutely adored by the fans. You might have only been there for a year or two, but you have that connection to the football club. It leaves a mark.
Listen, thank you very much for all that. Brilliant.
Top man.
Really enjoyed it. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Top man. Top man. Thank you.
BT Sport Pods.